April 15, 1942, 21 Henry Street, Ascot, Brisbane, Australia. The humidity clings to everything. Inside the converted garage behind Nirambla Mansion, 12 British TypeX cipher machines sit arranged in precise rows, their metal casings already beginning to sweat in the subtropical heat. The machines hum with electrical anticipation, waiting for operators who don't yet know they exist. Outside, beneath the spreading canopy of eucalyptus trees, 23-year-old Joyce Grace steps from an army truck onto the circular gravel drive. Her khaki Australian Women's Army Service uniform is already damp at the collar. She clutches her deployment papers, reading only CBB with no further explanation. The mansion before her rises 2 stories, wrapped in ornamental ironwork verandas on 3 sides, its slate roof glinting in the afternoon sun. Beside her, 19-year-old Coral Osborne adjusts her service cap and stares at the house with wide eyes. Neither woman knows what CBB means. Neither has been told why they were selected from signals training. Neither understands that behind those garage doors, at the rear of the property, they are about to become part of the most sophisticated intelligence operation Australia has ever assembled. An officer with American insignia approaches from the front entrance. Behind him, through the open door, Joyce catches glimpses of men in different uniforms. Australian, American, British, Canadian, moving with purposeful urgency through rooms that once hosted Brisbane's social elite. The officer doesn't introduce himself. He doesn't smile. "You're the cipher operators," he says, "not a question. Follow me. Don't talk to anyone about what you see. Don't ask questions. Don't write letters home describing your work. You're in signals. That's all anyone needs to know." They walk around the side of the mansion, past manicured gardens now trampled by military boots, past windows where blackout curtains hang ready for the night. The garage comes into view. 2 large structures that once housed the Watmore family's motor cars, now repurposed into something else entirely. The officer opens the door. The sound hits first, a mechanical symphony of rotating drums and striking type bars, 12 machines operating in synchronized chaos. The smell follows, hot metal, machine oil, paper, and the acrid tang of burning documents from an incinerator in the corner. Women in Awa's uniforms sit at each machine, their fingers flying across keyboards, eyes fixed on paper ribbons emerging from the devices in 5-letter groups. "Welcome to Central Bureau," the officer says. "You just joined the war that will decide the Pacific." Joyce and Coral exchange glances. They have no idea that in this garage they will help sink Japanese aircraft carriers. They don't know they will decode messages that lead to the death of Japan's greatest admiral. They cannot imagine that what they learn here today will remain classified for 50 years. A secret they cannot tell their husbands, their children, or their grandchildren. The garage door closes behind them with a metallic click. The world outside doesn't know they're here. For the next 3 years, it won't. The machine and its secrets. April 16th, 1942. 0800 hours. The garage, Central Bureau headquarters. Coral Osborne sits before a TypeX machine for the first time, her hands hovering above the keyboard like a pianist, uncertain of the first note. The device before her resembles a typewriter encased in a wooden box, but its complexity becomes apparent the moment the instructor, a stern British sergeant named Matthews, lifts the cover. 5 rotors, Matthews says, pointing to the cylindrical drums arranged horizontally inside the machine. Each one has 26 positions, 1 for each letter of the alphabet. When you press a key, electrical current passes through all 5 rotors in sequence, scrambling the letter according to the rotor settings. Joyce leans in from the adjacent machine, trying to follow. The mathematics alone seem impossible. 26 positions across 5 rotors, creating millions of possible combinations. "The Germans invented the Enigma machine," Matthews continues, his Yorkshire accent clipping each word with precision. "Our cryptographers adapted it, improved it. The TypeX is faster, more secure, and absolutely essential to everything we do here. The Japanese cannot break it. They cannot read our communications, but with the right settings, we can read theirs. Coral's fingers touch the keys experimentally. The machine responds with a satisfying mechanical click, but instead of producing the letter she pressed, the output shows something entirely different on the emerging paper ribbon. That's encryption, Matthews explains. Now watch what happens when I adjust the rotors to match the decrypt settings. He spins each rotor to specific positions, consulting a codebook that he keeps carefully angled away from the women's direct view. Type the same encrypted text again. Coral types. This time, the machine produces Japanese syllabic characters. Kana script that neither she nor Joyce can read, but which they recognize as coherent language. Every day, the settings change, Matthews says. Every day, you'll receive new rotor positions from the cryptanalysis section. Your job is to set up your machine perfectly. One wrong position, and the entire message becomes gibberish. Then you type the intercepted encrypted text, and the machine produces the decrypted Japanese. The linguists handle translation. You handle accuracy. He pauses, letting the weight of that word settle on them. If you make a mistake, one letter wrong, one rotor position off, the intelligence fails. Pilots don't know where enemy carriers are positioned. Infantry doesn't know where ambushes wait. Ships sail into traps. Men die. Joyce swallows hard. This isn't the signals work she imagined when she enlisted. This is something else entirely. What happens to the messages after we decrypt them? Coral asks. Matthews points to the incinerator glowing in the corner. At the end of every 8-hour shift, you burn everything. The encrypted input, the decrypted output, any notes, any mistakes, any scrap of paper that touch these machines. Nothing leaves this garage except the final translated intelligence that goes to the operations room in the main house. Nothing. Over the next 3 hours, Joyce and Coral practice setting rotor positions, typing encrypted dummy texts, checking their output against answer keys. The work demands absolute precision. One misaligned rotor and recognizable Japanese syllables dissolve into meaningless character strings. When that happens, they must stop, carefully adjust each rotor, and begin again. By noon, both women's fingers ache. The garage temperature has climbed above 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Sweat drips onto the paper ribbons. The mechanical clatter of 12 TypeX machines creates a headache-inducing din that never stops. You'll work 8-hour shifts, rotating through day, evening, and night, Matthews says as they pause for a brief lunch of sandwiches eaten standing at their machines. The war doesn't sleep. Neither does Central Bureau. Messages arrive from intercept stations across the Pacific 24 hours a day. Some are routine, some are urgent. You won't know which is which. You decrypt everything with the same care. Joyce asks the question both women have been wondering. What exactly is Central Bureau? Matthews considers how much to reveal. Signals intelligence, code breaking. The Allies intercept Japanese military radio transmissions. Army, Air Force, Navy. Those messages arrive here encrypted. The cryptanalysts upstairs work out the encryption methods and rotor settings. You apply those settings to decrypt the messages. The linguists translate them into English. The intelligence officers upstairs analyze them and send summaries to General MacArthur's headquarters. That intelligence helps win battles. That's all you need to know. It's more than Joyce and Coral expected, and less than they want to understand. But in the garage at the back of Nirambla Mansion, under the watchful eyes of British sergeants and American officers, understanding takes second place to duty. By 1600 hours, they're processing real intercepts, actual Japanese military communications pulled from radio waves thousands of miles away. The text means nothing to them, but they type it faithfully into their machines, watch the decrypted kana emerge on ribbons, and pass those ribbons to the translation team. Somewhere in those characters are battle plans, troop movements, supply routes, and strategic intentions. Somewhere in that garage, two young Australian women have just joined the invisible war being fought in electromagnetic frequencies and mathematical codes. They don't know it yet, but in 6 weeks, the intelligence they help decrypt will change the course of the Pacific War. The intercept that changed everything, May 20th, 1942, 0340 hours, Intercept Station, Townsville, Queensland. Royal Australian Air Force Corporal William Henderson sits hunched over his radio receiver, headphones clamped against his ears, fingers adjusting the frequency dial with microscopic precision. Static hisses and crackles through the night. He's hunting for Japanese naval traffic, the encrypted bursts of Morse code that slice through radio frequencies like digital ghosts. Then he hears it. A strong signal, extended transmission, clearly Japanese naval format. His hand moves instinctively to his typewriter. He begins transcribing the Morse into 5-letter groups, the code flowing faster than he can comfortably type. This is a long message. This is important. When the transmission ends 3 minutes later, Henderson has filled 2 pages with encrypted text. He doesn't know what it says. He doesn't know that he's just intercepted Operation MO, the Japanese plan to capture Port Moresby and cut Australia off from American supply lines. He only knows that this gets priority transmission to Central Bureau in Brisbane. By 0630 hours, the encrypted text arrives at Nirambla via secure teleprinter line. May 20th, 1942, 0700 hours, the garage, Central Bureau. Joyce Grace is 40 minutes into her day shift when Sergeant Matthews places the intercept on her desk. It's marked Priority in red pencil. Japanese naval traffic, Matthews says. The cryptanalysts just broke the new JN-25 variant 2 days ago. Settings are current. This needs immediate decrypt. Joyce's heart rate increases slightly. She's been at Central Bureau for 5 weeks. She's processed hundreds of messages, but none marked priority. Her fingers move to the TypeX rotors, checking each position against the daily settings sheet. Rotor 1, position K. Rotor 2, position M. Rotor 3, position F. She proceeds through all 5 rotors with painstaking care, double-checking each one. Satisfied with the setup, she begins typing the encrypted 5-letter groups. The TypeX machine clacks and whirs, its internal mechanisms routing electrical current through the precisely positioned rotors. The decrypted output emerges on a paper ribbon, kana syllables that Joyce cannot read but recognizes as coherent Japanese. She completes the decrypt in 22 minutes, tears off the ribbon, and passes it to the translation team operating from a desk at the far end of the garage. Lieutenant William Somerville, an Australian Army officer who learned Japanese during a pre-war diplomatic posting to Tokyo, receives the ribbon and begins translating. His expression changes as he reads. He stands abruptly, ribbon in hand, and walks quickly toward the main house. Joyce doesn't know what the message says. She's already moved to the next intercept in her queue. But upstairs in Niramla's converted drawing room, intelligence officers are reading Somerville's translation with urgent attention. Japanese Fourth Fleet preparing major operation. Carrier striking force comprising Zuikaku and Shokaku to support invasion convoy. Target Port Moresby. Tulagi occupation preliminary operation. Execution date May 3-8. The Battle of the Coral Sea is about to begin. And thanks to a radio operator in Townsville and a cipher operator in a Brisbane garage, the Americans now know it's coming. May 21st, 1942. Combined Operational Intelligence Centre, Melbourne. The intelligence from Central Bureau reaches Admiral Chester Nimitz, Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, via secure channels. He reads it carefully, compares it with intercepts from American code-breaking stations, and makes his decision. The U.S. Carriers Lexington and Yorktown will intercept the Japanese invasion force. Task Force 44, including the Australian cruisers HMAS Australia and HMAS Hobart, will support the operation. The Japanese believe they're sailing toward an undefended target. They don't know the Americans are waiting. May 4 to 8, 1942, Coral Sea. The battle unfolds across 4 days of carrier warfare. The first naval battle in history where opposing ships never see each other, fighting instead with aircraft launched across hundreds of miles of ocean. Japanese forces capture Tulagi. American aircraft strike back, damaging Japanese ships. Both sides search desperately for each other's carriers through cloud and rain. When they make contact, the fighting becomes ferocious. On May 7th, American dive bombers sink the Japanese carrier Shoho. The next day, Japanese aircraft cripple the Lexington, which later sinks. Both the Yorktown and the Japanese carrier Shokaku sustain damage. Tactically, the battle is nearly a draw. Both sides lose roughly equivalent tonnage. Strategically, it's an American victory. The Japanese invasion convoy turns back. Port Moresby remains in Allied hands. Australia stays in the war. In the garage at Central Bureau, Joyce, Coral and their fellow garage girls continue processing intercepts, unaware of how their work contributed to the battle. They don't receive battle reports. They don't get strategic briefings. They decrypt messages, burn the evidence, and begin the next 8-hour shift. But upstairs, intelligence officers know the truth. Signals intelligence from Central Bureau provided advanced warning that allowed Nimitz to position his carriers. The codebreakers gave the Americans a decisive advantage. 4 weeks later, that advantage will win an even more important battle. Midway, May 27, 1942. 19:20 hours, the garage, Central Bureau. Coral Hines, newly married to Sandy Hines, a Central Bureau signals officer she met on her first day, sits at her TypeX machine processing another priority intercept. This one comes from an American listening post in Hawaii that monitors Japanese naval traffic across the Central Pacific. The encrypted text is unusually long, over 3 pages of 5-letter groups. Coral sets her rotors according to the latest JN25 decrypt parameters and begins typing. The decrypted kana emerges steadily. She passes the completed ribbon to the translation desk, then returns to her queue. There are 17 more intercepts waiting. What Coral doesn't know is that she's just decrypted part of Admiral Yamamoto Isoroku's plan for Operation MI, the Japanese attack on Midway Island designed to destroy what remains of the American carrier fleet and force the United States to negotiate peace. American cryptanalysts have been reading approximately 85% of JN25 traffic since late April. The intercepts reveal an impending major operation against a target designated AF in Japanese communications. But where is AF? The Americans devise a clever test. They instruct Midway Island to send an uncoded radio message reporting that its water desalination plant has broken down. Japanese signals intelligence intercepts the message. 2 days later, Allied codebreakers decrypt a Japanese naval transmission reporting that AF is short of fresh water. Target confirmed, Midway Island. Throughout late May, Central Bureau and American code-breaking stations decrypt dozens of intercepts revealing Japanese force composition, attack timing, and approach routes. The intelligence is fragmentary. No single message contains the complete plan, but pieced together it provides Nimitz with an extraordinary advantage. He knows the Japanese are committing 4 fleet carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu. He knows they expect to catch the Americans by surprise. He knows the attack date, June 4, 1942. Nimitz sends his 3 available carriers, Enterprise, Hornet, and the hastily repaired Yorktown, to waters northeast of Midway and orders them to wait in ambush. June 4, 1942. 04:30 hours, 200 miles northwest of Midway Island. The Japanese carrier force launches its first strike wave toward Midway. 108 aircraft aimed at destroying the island's defenses before the invasion fleet arrives. Vice Admiral Nagumo Chuichi, commanding the carrier striking force from Akagi's bridge, believes American carriers are still near Hawaii, at least 2 days away. He's wrong. The American carriers are 50 miles away, steaming directly toward him, already launching strike aircraft. At 10:25 hours, American dive bombers from Enterprise and Yorktown roll into their attacks. In 6 minutes, they destroy Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu. Hiryu strikes back, crippling Yorktown before American bombers find and destroy her that afternoon. The battle is over by evening. Japan loses 4 fleet carriers and hundreds of irreplaceable veteran pilots. The strategic balance in the Pacific shifts permanently. Japan will never again possess the offensive capability to threaten Hawaii or force a negotiated peace. Admiral Yamamoto, watching from the battleship Yamato 300 miles away, orders the entire operation cancelled and the fleet withdrawn. June 6, 1942. The Garage, Central Bureau. Joyce processes intercepts describing the Japanese retreat. The translations speak of damaged ships, lost aircraft, and cancelled operations. The intelligence officers upstairs understand what this means, but the Garage girls receive no explanation. They decrypt. They burn. They begin the next shift. But in headquarters across the Pacific, commanders study the battle reports and reach the same conclusion. Signals intelligence won the Battle of Midway. The codebreakers gave Nimitz the advantage he needed to position his carriers in exactly the right place, at exactly the right time. In that Brisbane garage, surrounded by the mechanical clatter of TypeX machines, women in their early 20s just helped win the most important naval battle of the Pacific War. They can't tell anyone. Not now. Not for 50 years. Operation Vengeance, April 14th, 1943. 09:20 hours. Frumell Station, Melbourne. U.S. Navy Lieutenant Commander Alva Laswell stares at the decrypted message before him with barely contained excitement. His hands are shaking slightly as he rereads the text for the 3rd time. The intercept, pulled from Japanese naval radio traffic the previous evening, contains Admiral Yamamoto's complete travel itinerary for an inspection tour of forward bases in the Solomon Islands. Date, time, aircraft type, escort details, arrival times, departure times, everything is there in bureaucratic precision. "We've hit the jackpot," Laswell says aloud to no one in particular. The message is transmitted immediately to Admiral Nimitz in Pearl Harbor and to Central Bureau in Brisbane. The implications are staggering. The man who planned the Pearl Harbor attack, Japan's greatest naval strategist, will be flying in a vulnerable transport aircraft over territory where American long-range fighters can reach him. The decision requires approval from the highest level. If the Americans shoot down Yamamoto and the Japanese suspect their codes are compromised, they might change their entire cipher system, blinding Allied intelligence. The risk is enormous. Nimitz decides the risk is acceptable. Yamamoto's value to Japanese strategy outweighs the danger of compromising the code. April 18th, 1943. 06:30 hours. Henderson Field, Guadalcanal. 18 Lockheed P-38. Lightning fighters sit on the Marston matting runway, engines warming in the tropical dawn. Major John Mitchell briefs the pilots one final time. Admiral Yamamoto departs Rabaul at 0600 Tokyo time, bound for Balale Airfield on Bougainville. Flight time approximately 2 hours. He'll be flying in a Mitsubishi G4M Betty bomber configured for transport, with an escort of 6 Zero fighters. Our job is to intercept over Bougainville's southern coast and shoot him down. The intelligence is so precise that Mitchell can plot an intercept course to the minute. The P-38s will fly low over the ocean to avoid Japanese radar, then climb to attack altitude just as Yamamoto's flight approaches Bougainville. At 07 to 10 hours, the P-38s lift off and turn northwest, flying just 50 feet above the waves. April 18th, 1943. 09:34 hours, 27,000 feet above Bougainville. Admiral Yamamoto sits in the starboard side seat of the lead G4M bomber, reviewing documents for his inspection tour. The flight is routine, the sky is clear. 6 Zero fighters fly escort above and behind the 2 transport bombers. At 09:34 hours, the Zero pilots spot aircraft below them. twin-engine, twin-boom silhouettes climbing rapidly from sea level. P-38s. The American fighters split into two groups. 4 attacked the bombers directly. 14 engaged the Zero escorts, drawing them away from Yamamoto's aircraft. Captain Thomas Lanphier Jr. and Lieutenant Rex Barber close on Yamamoto's bomber from below. Lanphier fires first, his 20mm cannon and 50 caliber machine guns raking the G4M's left engine and wing. Barber follows, pouring fire into the fuselage and tail. The bomber trails flame and smoke, rolls left and plunges into the jungle below. It impacts at high speed, disintegrating on contact. There are no survivors. Yamamoto's body is found the next day in the wreckage, still strapped into his seat, killed by gunfire wounds. The Japanese recover his remains and transport them to Tokyo under conditions of utmost secrecy. April 21st, 1943. The Garage Central Bureau. Joyce and Coral process intercepts describing unusual Japanese naval movements and encrypted communications, referencing high-level personnel changes. The translations are fragmentary and deliberately vague, but intelligence officers recognize what they're reading. Japan has lost its most capable naval commander. The Americans release a cover story that Australian coast watchers spotted Yamamoto's aircraft and alerted American fighters on routine patrol. The Japanese accept the explanation. They tighten their security procedures but don't change their cipher system. The secret remains secure. JN-25 continues to be readable. The intelligence continues to flow. In the garage behind Nirambla Mansion, the TypeX machines keep running. The garage girls keep decrypting, the evidence keeps burning, and none of them can speak about any of it. The weapon no one sees, August 1943. The Garage Central Bureau. By mid-1943, Central Bureau has expanded far beyond the garage at Nirambla. The operation now employs over 2,000 personnel, spilling out onto the nearby Ascot racecourse, where temporary buildings house cryptanalysts, translators, and administrative staff. The garage still operates, still houses the core TypeX cipher section, but it's now just one component of a massive intelligence machine. Joyce, Coral, and the other garage girls work rotating 8-hour shifts, day, evening, and night, maintaining continuous coverage as intercepts arrive from listening posts scattered across the Pacific. The volume of traffic is enormous. On busy days, each operator processes dozens of messages, fingers flying across TypeX keyboards until the mechanical rhythm becomes automatic. The work creates strange bonds. The women cannot discuss their jobs with family or friends, cannot share the stress and tedium with anyone outside Central Bureau. They form tight friendships with each other, built on shared secrecy and mutual understanding. "We became incredibly close," Madeline Chidgey would recall decades later. Anyone who was homesick, lovesick, or just plain sick of waiting for the war to end was never down for long. We supported each other because no one else could understand what we were doing. And some find romance within the secure walls. Coral's wartime marriage to Sandy Hines begins with coded messages hidden in the white space padding of encrypted transmissions. Love letters disguised as cipher text, cut from the paper ribbons before the official intelligence reaches commanders. They marry during a brief leave in 1943, then return to their TypeX machines and continue decrypting messages that help kill Japanese soldiers. The emotional complexity of the work is rarely discussed. The women decrypt battle orders, casualty reports, supply manifests, and strategic communications. They know that somewhere men are dying based on the intelligence they help produce. But they also know that Allied soldiers are surviving because of that same intelligence. They don't question the morality, they focus on accuracy. 1944, 1945, the long campaign. As the war grinds forward, Central Bureau's intelligence supports every major Allied operation in the Southwest Pacific. The codebreakers provide crucial information for The Battle of Milne Bay, where Australian and American forces repel the first Japanese land invasion attempt against Australian territory. The New Guinea Campaign, where Allied forces use decrypted Japanese communications to anticipate defensive positions and supply routes. The Battle of Leyte Gulf, where signals intelligence helps destroy much of what remains of the Japanese combined fleet. The Philippines Liberation, where MacArthur's forces used decoded Japanese communications to exploit weaknesses in defensive deployments. The Garage Girls process it all, thousands of intercepts flowing through their TypeX machines, emerging as decrypted kana, translated into English, analyzed by intelligence officers, and delivered to commanders making life and death decisions. By late 1944, Japan's cipher security is collapsing under sustained Allied cryptanalysis. American and Australian codebreakers are reading substantial portions of Japanese military traffic across all services. The intelligence advantage is overwhelming. Japan is losing the war in electromagnetic frequencies before it loses on the battlefield. August 6, 1945. 08:15 hours, Hiroshima, Japan. The American B-29 bomber Enola Gay releases an atomic bomb over Hiroshima. The explosion instantly kills 80,000 people and levels 4 square miles of the city. A horrified Japanese officer stationed near Hiroshima witnesses the detonation and immediately radios a frantic report to Imperial Navy headquarters in Tokyo. His message is transmitted encrypted, standard procedure even in catastrophe. An Australian signals operator stationed in the Philippines intercepts the transmission. By established procedure, he forwards it to Central Bureau in Brisbane. August 6, 1945. 14:20 hours. The Garage, Central Bureau. The encrypted message arrives at Narambla marked Flash, the highest priority designation. Joyce Grace, now a sergeant with 3 years of TypeX experience, receives it from the shift supervisor. She sets her rotors according to current Japanese naval settings and begins typing the encrypted text. The decrypted kana emerges in stuttering bursts. The officers panic, evident even in syllabic characters. The translation team receives the ribbon and works quickly. Within 15 minutes, the English translation reaches the operations room. The Japanese officer describes a single bomb creating destruction beyond comprehension. Entire city blocks vaporized, a mushroom cloud rising miles into the atmosphere, heat intense enough to melt metal, a weapon unlike anything previously witnessed in warfare. This is the first detailed ground report of atomic weapons effects, transmitted by the enemy himself, intercepted by Allied signals intelligence, and decrypted by a woman in a Brisbane garage. Joyce doesn't know what the translation says. She's already processing the next intercept in her queue, but upstairs, intelligence officers read the report with grim satisfaction. The new weapon works. Japan will surrender within days. The war is almost over. The secret work can almost end. Almost. The Silence, August 15th, 1945. Narambla Central Bureau Headquarters. Japan's surrender announcement arrives via multiple channels. Central Bureau intercepts and decrypts the formal notification to Japanese forces across the Pacific. For the first time in years, the intelligence will not be used to plan attacks or anticipate enemy movements. The war is over. But for the Garage Girls and every other member of Central Bureau, another kind of silence is just beginning. September 1945. Demobilization. As Allied forces begin demobilizing, Central Bureau starts shutting down its operations. The TypeX machines are packed and shipped to secure storage. The intercept stations across the Pacific close and their personnel reassigned. The cryptanalysts and translators return to civilian life, carrying secrets they cannot share. Each member of Central Bureau receives a stern final briefing. Everything they witnessed, everything they worked on, every code they broke and message they decrypted remains classified under the Official Secrets Act. They are forbidden to discuss their wartime work with anyone, family, friends, journalists, historians. Violation will result in prosecution. Don't talk about it, the briefing officers repeat. Not now, not ever. This work remains classified for national security. You served your country. Now serve your country by staying silent. Joyce Grace returns to civilian life and tells people she worked in military signals, nothing more specific. Her parents never learn what she actually did. Coral Hines remains married to Sandy, the only person who truly understands her war because he shared it. But even they don't discuss Central Bureau with outsiders. Their children grow up knowing only that both parents served in signals during the war. Helen Kenny returns to journalism, writing for the Australian Women's Weekly and the Sydney Morning Herald. She interviews generals and politicians, writes about major historical events, but never writes about the garage where she spent 3 years decrypting Japanese military communications. The secrecy becomes habitual. Years pass. The women attend reunions with fellow garage girls, the only people with whom they can discuss their wartime experiences. They form lifelong friendships built on shared silence. Decades pass. The secret holds. 1970s, 1980s, partial declassification. In the 1970s, portions of Allied signals intelligence work begin to be declassified. The story of Bletchley Park and the breaking of German Enigma codes becomes public, celebrated in books and documentaries. Alan Turing becomes a posthumous hero, but Central Bureau remains classified. The Australian and American governments maintain the secrecy, arguing that revealing cryptographic techniques might compromise current intelligence operations. The garage girls grow older, watching Bletchley Park veterans receive recognition while their own contributions remain unknown. Some feel frustration, some feel forgotten, but all remain bound by the Official Secrets Act. They cannot march in Anzac Day parades as Central Bureau veterans because admitting they served at Central Bureau violates classification. They cannot correct historians who write about the Pacific War without mentioning signals intelligence. They cannot claim credit for victories they helped achieve. One woman remains married to a man who goes to his deathbed believing she was a wartime cleaner or secretary. She never corrects him. The secret is more important than recognition. 1990s. The documents declassify. In the early 1990s, Australian and American intelligence agencies finally begin releasing Central Bureau documents. Historians gain access to files describing the code-breaking operations, the intelligence victories, and the personnel who made it possible. The garage girls, now in their 70s, can finally speak. Journalists arrive at their homes asking for interviews. Historians request their memories for books and documentaries. Government officials schedule commemoration ceremonies, finally acknowledging the secret work performed 50 years earlier. Joyce, Coral, Helen, Ailsa, Madeline, and the other surviving garage girls described their wartime service publicly for the first time. They explain the TypeX machines, the 8-hour shifts, the burning of evidence, the absolute secrecy. They reveal how they decrypted messages that helped win Midway, Coral Sea, and countless other battles. Some cry during the interviews, releasing emotions held for 5 decades. Others speak matter-of-factly, describing their work with the same precision they applied to their TypeX machines. All express pride that the secret finally emerged. But the recognition comes late. Many Central Bureau veterans have already died, taking their stories to the grave without ever receiving acknowledgement for their service. 2015. The ceremony. In 2015, 7 Central Bureau veterans, all in their 90s, gather at Nirambla Mansion for an official commemoration ceremony. The house is now a private residence again, but the owners permit the event. Steve Meakin, Deputy Secretary of Intelligence and Security, officiates the ceremony. A commemorative plaque is unveiled on the front garden wall, reading Central Bureau, an organization comprising service personnel of Australia, USA, Britain, Canada and New Zealand. Both men and women functioned in this house from 1942 till 1945. From intercepted enemy radio messages, the organization provided intelligence which made a decisive contribution to the Allied victory in the Pacific. The veterans stand before the plaque, some supported by walkers, others by family members. They look at the mansion that housed their secret war, at the garage that still stands at the rear, and remember what they cannot forget. Meakin tells the assembled crowd that Central Bureau provided the Allies with a potent and very secret weapon, a weapon to which, in large measure, they owed their victory. For the first time in 70 years, the secret is officially acknowledged. 2023, Australia Day Honours. On Australia Day 2023, 3 surviving garage girls receive official honours for their wartime service. Coral Hines, now 100 years old, Joyce Grace, 101, Ailsa Hale, 99. The honours come 80 years after they first sat at TypeX machines in a Brisbane garage and began decrypting Japanese military communications. 8 decades after they helped win battles they couldn't discuss. 8 decades after they swore to keep secrets that would remain classified for 50 years. The recognition is meaningful, but it's also bittersweet. Most of their fellow garage girls are gone, having died without public acknowledgement of their contributions. The garage at Nirambla is still standing, but Central Bureau's full story remains known only to historians and intelligence veterans. The legacy present day. 21 Henry Street, Ascot, Brisbane. Nirambla Mansion stands quietly in one of Brisbane's most prestigious suburbs, an elegant 2-story Queenslander with ornamental ironwork and a slate roof. Tourists occasionally stop to photograph the commemorative plaque. Local historians lead walking tours that pause at the front gate to tell Central Bureau's story. But the garage where Joyce, Coral and the other garage girls worked for 3 years is just a garage again. The TypeX machines are gone, preserved in museums or destroyed for security. The incinerator, where thousands of decrypted messages were burned, no longer exists. The only evidence of what happened here is memory and declassified documents. Historians now recognize Central Bureau as one of the most successful Allied intelligence operations of World War II. The organization's contributions include breaking Japanese Army and Air Force codes, providing strategic and tactical intelligence throughout the Pacific campaign, supporting every major Allied operation in the Southwest Pacific from 1942-1945. Contributing intelligence that led to victories at Midway, Coral Sea, Milne Bay, Hollandia, and Leyte Gulf. Providing information that enabled the shooting down of Admiral Yamamoto. Establishing the foundation for Australia's modern signals intelligence. Capabilities through the Australian Signals Directorate at its peak. Central Bureau employed over 4,000 personnel from 5 Allied nations, making it one of the largest code-breaking operations outside Bletchley Park. The Garage Girls were a small but essential part of that success. They operated the TypeX machines that transformed encrypted intercepts into readable intelligence. They maintained the precision necessary for accurate decryption. They kept the secrets for 50 years. Their work was invisible during the war and remained invisible for decades afterward, but it was no less important for being secret. The question of recognition. Some historians and veterans have advocated for Nirambla to be preserved as a museum, similar to Bletchley Park in England. David Dufty, author of The Secret Code Breakers of Central Bureau, argues that the house should be acquired by the Queensland or Australian government and open to the public. It would be a fantastic way to honour the men and women who work so secretly, Dufty has said. They never got the acknowledgement they deserved before, during or after the war. It was decades before they were allowed to march on Anzac Day. But as of 2025, Nirambla remains a private residence. The Queensland Department of Environment and Science has stated it does not buy properties or turn them into museums. The house is not listed on the Queensland Heritage Register, despite its historical significance. The garage where codes were broken and wars were won sits empty. The survivors' reflections. In interviews during the 2010s and early 2020s, the surviving garage girls reflected on their wartime service with a mixture of pride and matter-of-factness. "Everything was so secret," Joyce Grace recalled. "Don't talk about it outside, don't tell anybody. You can tell them you're in signals, but don't go any further than that. And we sort of knew that there was something special about it." Coral Hines remembered the burden of secrecy. "You couldn't talk about it. Mum and Dad didn't know what I did. I used to just tell people I was in signals. It really just became a way of life." But they also remembered the camaraderie, the friendships, the sense of purpose. "It was our secret machine," Joyce said of the TypeX. "We knew it was important. We knew we were helping win the war." When asked if they felt bitter about the delayed recognition, most garage girls expressed only mild regret. They understood why the secrecy was necessary. They accepted that wartime intelligence work often goes unacknowledged. They took satisfaction in knowing the truth, even when others didn't. "We did our part," Coral said simply. "That's what mattered." The lesson. The story of the Garage Girls illustrates a fundamental truth about warfare. Victories are won not only by soldiers on battlefields, but by intelligence officers in converted garages, by code breakers solving mathematical puzzles, by radio operators transcribing Morse code at 0300 hours, and by translators rendering enemy languages into actionable intelligence. These contributions are often invisible. The work is classified. The participants are sworn to secrecy. Recognition, if it comes at all, arrives decades later when the participants are elderly or dead, but the work remains essential. At Midway, signals intelligence gave Admiral Nimitz the advantage he needed to position his carriers for ambush. At the Coral Sea, decrypted intercepts provided advance warning of the Japanese invasion. Throughout the Pacific War, the intelligence from Central Bureau helped Allied commanders anticipate enemy movements, exploit weaknesses, and minimize casualties. Young women in their late teens and early 20s, working 8-hour shifts in a Brisbane garage, helped produce that intelligence. They typed encrypted 5-letter groups into TypeX machines. They checked their rotor settings with painstaking care. They burned the evidence in an incinerator. They kept the secret for 50 years. And when the secret finally emerged, the world learned that history is written not only by generals and politicians, but by cipher operators whose names are forgotten and whose work is classified. The Garage Girls of Central Bureau helped win World War II. Then they went home and didn't tell anyone about it. Epilogue. August 6, 1945. The Last Decrypt. Joyce Grace sits at her TypeX machine on the evening shift, processing the intercept that describes Hiroshima's atomic destruction. Her fingers move automatically across the keyboard. The machine clacks and whirs. The decrypted kana emerges on a paper ribbon. She doesn't know what it says. She doesn't know that she's just decrypted one of the war's final crucial intelligence messages. She only knows that there are 16 more intercepts in her queue, and her shift ends in 4 hours. She passes the ribbon to the translation team, feeds the next encrypted message into her machine, and continues working. Outside the garage, the tropical night settles over Brisbane. Somewhere in the Pacific, soldiers are preparing for an invasion of Japan that will never come. Somewhere in Tokyo, Japanese commanders are reading the Hiroshima reports and understanding that their war is lost. And in a converted garage behind a mansion on Henry Street, a young woman in an Australian Women's Army Service uniform keeps typing, keeps decrypting, keeps burning the evidence, and keeps the secret. For 3 more years, then for 50 more. Until finally, in the 1990s and 2000s, the secret becomes history, and history remembers.